those of you listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we thank you. You're rating, you're reviewing, you're doing a great job out there, and we certainly do appreciate it. But for those who are watching on YouTube, the bread and butter of the show, you're going to be looking at the graphic in front of us, and you're going to think to yourself, boy, that looks Frankenstein together. And you'd be right, because we have a Frankenstein fight. Herbert Burns taking on Bill Algeo. And listen, Algeo's way too big in the picture, but I'll explain why, because Algeo originally due to be taking on Billy Quarantillo this weekend. For Herbert Burns, lost his first UFC fight, decided I'm going to take forever off and away. And then he was supposed to take on Hussein Ashkabov, a guy who was making his UFC debut. He was undefeated. Ashkabov was the favorite. I didn't understand why, because he hadn't really fought anybody. But alas, Burns gets to take on a much higher level of competition. And I say that not lightly, but for Bill Algeo, it's been a wild run so far in the UFC since he fought Ricardo Lamas and got his legs kicked to crap.
Good fight, though, for his debut.
Since he fought Spike Carlisle, a guy whose cardio went off a cliff. Since he fought Ricardo Ramos, who took him down time and time again. Since he fought Joe Anderson Brito, who tried to take him down, then couldn't take him down anymore and got outstruck. For Bill Algeo, the King of Prussia, Señor Perfecto. I mean, this is a guy out of King of Prussia, Pennsylvania. And when you look at it for Algeo, out of Algeo's MMA and kickboxing, that really is the biggest part of his game. You look at him compared to other featherweights, he's got length. Once he establishes distance, it's really hard to close that gap against him in his fights. Doesn't necessarily check leg kicks all that well. Doesn't really handle takedowns all that well. But when you do look at Algeo, on his best day, he looks like a ranked fighter. And on his worst day, you kind of scratch your head and go, did we maybe miss the mark? Was it too late bringing him into the UFC?
And that's what I like about Bill Algeo. Like, the foundation is very strong of his skills. He does have decent takedown defense, although it does get pushed in some of his fights. I would say that it's been an improving component of his game, but that's going to be the thing that's going to get tested the most in this matchup by far, because I genuinely do not think Herbert Burns can stand with Bill Algeo, even for 5 minutes. And
no, I just want to add to your point, sorry, before you get too far into it. For Bill Algeo, you look at the takedown defense, UFC and Dana White's Contender Series adjacent. Loughnane took him down on 3 of 8 attempts. Lamas took him down on 5 of 11 attempts. Spike Carlisle on 4 of 13. Ramos on 8 of 13. And then his last time out, Joe Anderson Brito 2 of 4 before Brito's cardio started to slow.
I know, so it's been the part of his game that he's been improving since he came to the UFC, because everybody knows Bill Algeo's going in there to kickbox with them. So if you're going in with a kickboxer, unless you're Sean Strickland, what's the game plan? You're probably going to try to take him down. Herbert Burns, though, is going to find this a very difficult matchup, and this is why I believe so. He's not known for phenomenal cardio himself. He is somebody who can get tired as the fight goes on, and he leaves his body wide open for a guy in Bill Algeo who really does like to go to the body with his own kicks, and I think that's going to be really difficult for Herbert Burns, because you're going to bring up the Teddy Atlas quote, oh, water in the basement. It really is key, especially in a 3-round fight, that I do expect to be fought at a very high pace, because I think Burns kind of realizes, okay, I'm probably not going to be able to be steady with this guy for 3 rounds. I know the 3rd round's probably going to look ugly for me. So if I just really go for it early on, I do think Herbert Burns can have a really good chance if he uses that burst, gets on top, uses great jiu-jitsu. He's just one of these fighters who it's almost like one punch, one kill power, but with his jiu-jitsu and not with his power. How many times do we talk about power punchers? It's, hey, if they land the shot, it's great, but if they don't land the shot, they get tired throwing a lot of those big shots. Gilbert Burns grapples in that same capacity. Herbert Burns, forgive me, grapples in that same capacity to where he's going to go for those really big actions, and it's great if he is able to snatch an arm, get into a really good position, but the problem is there's a lot of space that is left on some of his transitions on the mat, and I do think that Bill Algeo, even though he has been susceptible to the takedown in the past, I think that he can scramble once he is on his back in this matchup, and that's going to be a really important thing to see if he can get back up to his feet based off of them.
Forget the opponent that I'm going to bring up, but just listen to me explain how Herbert Burns is able to get the win over Evan Dunham. But if you look at it, Burns slips out of the way of a punch into the back of Dunham, grabs it, jumps on top, gets the back, and he's a 3rd degree Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt. He is of that nth degree, and he's one of those guys that's going to snatch a neck, he's going to snatch an arm. He really is working to get the submission out of those positions, and when you do look at it for Algeo, obviously the biggest component of his game that is not that great, it is that takedown defense, but for Burns, Matt, I never look too hard into this stuff, but my God, when I went out and I watched his Instagram videos, What in the hell are you putting those out there for, Herbert? He's hitting combinations in the past with Sean Soriano, and I don't know who it's impressing. Maybe Gilbert, maybe his family.
I don't want to throw you under. I've never brought up an Instagram video ever on this channel.
But it is 1-2s. They're slow as molasses. I don't know why we're doing it, because he's thrown out his nickname, The Blaze 420. But when you do look at it for Gilbert Burns, obviously his hands are probably the most lacking point of his game. And for Bill Algeo, so much quicker, so much more speedy. And when you compare his significant strike output level, 5.88 per minute, to the 3.38 average in the UFC, Algeo's en fuego, and then you consider how much he gets hit. I mean, it is at 4.43, so that's not that great, but it still is a positive differential. So for Algeo, much better striker. For Algeo, his last time out, it was a win over Joe Anderson Brito. That fight was about 5 months ago. For Herbert Burns, almost 2 years ago, since he did lose to Daniel Pineda, he could beat pillar to post and in positions on the ground as well against a smaller guy in Pineda.
Because I don't care how skilled you are. If you have bad cardio, your skills do fail once your cardio's gone, and that's the problem for Herbert Burns. This is my issue. He already has poor cardio, and he's going to have to waste even more energy going for takedown attempts against Bill Algeo.
And he missed weight his last time out. That was a major component. He had a catchweight fight in the fight against Evan Dunham at 149, so 149.5 against Dunham, no issue. But he also weighed, as you can see on screen, 149.5 against Daniel Pineda. I think, what are we doing here? At this point in his career, I think featherweight's a big stretch at 34.
I don't know if I've been making it very clear, but I think Herbert Burns is going to have an awful time this weekend in this matchup. You're fighting a rangy striker with great cardio, great output, who loves to go to the body. Every single time he goes to the body, he's just chipping away at Herbert Burns' gas tank even more, and even more, and even more. And that's the problem. Burns in that first round is going to be the better grappler, without a doubt, 1,000 times out of 1,000. In the second round, though, we've seen Herbert Burns get out-grappled when he does get tired, and I know Daniel Pineda is a good grappler in his own right, so just being beat by a guy like that on the mat isn't a death sentence for your MMA career, but I don't think he can stand Bill Algeo's output, especially in the second and third round, because Herbert Burns defensively is okay. You throw a kick, I'm going to try to take you down off the kick. You throw a punch, I'm going to try to slip it, go for a big action. There's not a lot of foundational defensive striking in Herbert Burns' game plan, and that's why I think he's really going to struggle against Algeo, who is much bigger, who is much rangier, and that's going to force Burns to shoot from even further away every single time, and those are just going to make the reads for Algeo even easier. And I always go back to when Bill front kicked Ricardo Lamas in the face in the third round of their fight. He didn't win the fight, but that was one of those losses where it's okay, you gain stock even in a loss, and I really do think that the best version of Señor Perfecto is better than the best version of Herbert Burns.
You look at the odds in this fight, they open with Burns plus 100, Algeo minus 120. Algeo's gained, he's minus 170, Burns at a plus 145. We have a look at the Topology votes. Surprise to us, they are to you. I'm going to say over under 65% Algeo.
I'll say under.
It is under, so 346 total votes. This fight was added on short notice. 59% Algeo, 84% by decision. For the 41% that have Burns, 59% by submission. Bill Algeo doesn't have good takedown defense. Herbert Burns has good takedowns. Herbert Burns' striking is lacking. I know he has that flying knee knockout early in his UFC career. He also hasn't fought in 2 years. The weight cut's an issue for him. He's got Killcliff MMA behind him. You can't have caffeine before a fight, but maybe they load him up with Killcliff.
You just can't have 2 coffees. You can have 1.
Well, Killcliff's an energy drink, but we'll see what happens. I do like Bill Algeo with the output. Algeo in his originally scheduled matchup against Quarantillo would have been fun. I think Quarantillo is a much more well-rounded fighter than Herbert Burns, so I probably would have picked Quarantillo to win that fight. And I actually would have had Burns to beat Ashkabab, because Ashkabab's never beaten anybody of substance. But in this matchup, I do like Algeo with the output, with the length and the range, as long as he can figure out that distance early on. We saw what he did in his last fight against Joe Anderson Brito, a guy who has great takedowns in his own right, and good jiu-jitsu.
And when I bring up his takedown defense, please hear me out. He's practiced for the same fighter in 3 straight camps. Yes, he lost to him the first time, beat him the second time, and I do think Algeo's takedown defense overall did look improved his last time out against Brito. I just think stylistically, when you're constantly getting ready for a fighter who is somewhat limited on the feet, who has great ground skills, your camp's going to be very similar every single time getting ready for that opponent. So I do feel like as Algeo's progressed throughout his MMA career, that's been the one area of his game that he has been able to improve. But again, against Herbert Burns, that is his clear path to victory. If Burns decides, I'm going to kickbox with Bill Algeo for 15 minutes, it's going to be a terrible looking fight for him.
The 1-2s are coming from Herbert Burns, Matt. Both of us going with Bill Algeo to get the win. Let us know down below if the bad takedown defense is enough and you're going with Herbert Burns, or if you have the King of Prussia's King of Prussia. We have a big time card, and if you like this fight at featherweight, Oh my goodness, Jourdain is taking on Shane Burgos. You're not going to want to miss that, so keep it locked in with Fight Night Picks, we always say. Let's get into it.